Thunder Grunt.
Hey guys!
Hey, Bob.
Bob.
I want you to introduce yourself, say what you do, and say your Twitter handle.
I am Jimmy George. I am a screenwriter and full-time script consultant. My Twitter handle is @JimmyRGeorge.
I am Jamie Nash, screenwriter, and that's it. And my Twitter handle.
That's all he does.
And
Juggles, dude.
that's right. You can see my juggling videos at Jamie_Nash on Twitter.
And I'm Bob Rose. I'm a filmmaker, and I can't juggle, and I don't script butcher, and I'm at Thunder Grunt Bob on Twitter. And today we're going to talk about a classic.
Love
We
it.
haven't done a classic in a while, guys.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
We've been ragging on the
We're ragging on
current
new stuff.
blockbusters.
Everyone's going to be like those guys and their nostalgia. They love all the old stuff and hate all the new stuff.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about Men in Black.
Yeah, because the new one's approaching, so we figured we'd revisit what started it all, right? It's in a couple weeks.
Yep, Men in Black. I guess you call it Men in Black 4.
International? Yeah,
International, but it is
I don't know
4.
what the date, but I remember when Will Smith was king of 4th of July.
Yes.
All his movies, and I was wondering if Men in Black hits somewhere around that, the new
Second
sequel.
one, I don't know.
I was
you mean the
my wife
release
was
date.
asking me, when does it come out? And I was like, I wonder if they're still doing that kind of 4th of July thing.
I think it's
in
mid-June.
It might be June, yeah.
Yeah, it's a little early, like a week early.
Spider-Man has taken over the July slots.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Well,
There you
there's
go.
enough of those movies too.
Will Smith is Spider-Man, right?
Yeah.
But we're talking about the first Men in Black movie
Yes.
only,
Yes. Circa
not any of the sequels.
1997.
1997. It's a 90s movie. And Jamie,
Yes.
how successful was this movie?
This movie was very successful. In fact, it
No
was,
shit.
it was number 2 that year behind
Oh God, it's 97.
a big
right?
movie. Big.
Titanic.
Titanic.
I would
Titanic.
have slapped
you guys
myself.
couldn't see, but Jamie was
And
making
Jamie was
this
making the
this
Titanic.
big.
Yeah.
I was doing an impersonation of, I don't know, the boat. I don't know, the iceberg.
Small note: I've still never seen Titanic.
No.
Really?
No.
I've never seen Titanic.
Why?
On Jamie's Twitter profile, it's very clearly
I wrote-
stated that he wrote it.
I know Jamie wrote
I
it
wrote the
according to
movie.
Twitter, but I didn't see it. I'm
I
sorry,
wrote
Jamie.
the asylum version of Titanic.
Titanic 2. Yeah.
No, I can't believe you haven't seen Titanic. Why not?
It's,
Just because
uh,
it's a thing now?
not that I wanted to talk about this on the
Celine
podcast.
Dion.
No, because when I was younger, it just seemed like a bunch of the people I didn't like in high school loved Titanic, and I was like, "That's not a cool movie to see." And then I never saw it, and then it just got funny that I was the guy
I
that
see.
didn't see
It's
Titanic.
just a thing.
So now I just want to like stick with it for the rest of my life.
I saw it a couple
We
times.
should do
in
an
the theater.
episode just to
No,
force
don't
it.
do
Yeah,
it!
we're doing next week, Titanic.
Titanic, no.
Anyway.
I have nothing against it. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, you should probably wait to see it on the screen or something. It doesn't
Yeah,
make
when
sense.
there's an event.
I might break it.
3D, James Cameron.
Some Avatar, pre-Avatar James
Yeah.
Cameron fest. I'll
Yeah.
break that rule. Yeah.
He'll do like 1,000 frames per second. Something, some crazy thing.
Remaster, right? Yeah.
Okay, so Men in Black was second to Titanic.
Okay.
Which means it's really just for the number one movie because
That's right.
Titanic's
Might
not a
as well
fair
be.
comparison. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it had a domestic take of $250 million
God, in '97.
and a foreign take of $338 million
Man.
for a grand total of $589 million.
Is this with inflation?
I don't have my page.
What's
I
that,
just
Jamie?
copied it. I just copied it out of Box Office Mojo, so I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think it's
I don't
So
think
that's-
inflation. That's they list
That's
what the actual number.
impressive
Real
numbers.
dollars.
That's an
Yeah.
impressive amount of money.
Now, interestingly enough, like Titanic was like 600. It beat it domestically.
Yeah.
It's double take. So that was almost a must have been like a turning point as far as box office went.
Yeah.
For just box office history.
Wow.
And it was based on a comic book. The comic book. Anybody read the comic?
I went and read a few issues.
did?
Yeah.
I mean, back then, because it was the movie was
in
like
preparation. I was curious.
And I don't think it had a long run. I think it was
No, there's only
short.
10 issues over
That's
2
right,
years.
10 issues, yeah.
Yeah.
My understanding was it was quite different.
Very different, and the tone was not jokey at
Dark
all.
tone, and
super
instead
serious.
of like erasing memories, they killed people.
Yeah,
you know?
it was.
I've heard
very
it compared
serious.
from like the original Turtles comic to how Turtles turned out,
Yeah,
and this was kind of.
I would say it's
that
even
kinda-
darker than
it's
the
even
original
darker than- okay.
Turtles. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
Turtles at least had the silliness of being
But you did
Teenage
have-
Mutant
Yeah,
Ninja
right,
Turtles.
Yeah, you did have J, and you did have K, and you had Z, and you had
And they investigated other paranormal things,
Right.
not just
Yeah.
UFOs. That was the other thing, which I could have seen this
So it's like
franchise
X-Files.
expanding to. A little bit more X-Files, except they were the ones controlling, everything
Yeah.
behind the scenes.
Right.
They were more like the cigarette smoking man.
Yeah.
There's a movie also. I remember seeing it in a film class, and I was like, "Whoa, this is crazy!" Called "Brother from Another Planet," and
Yeah.
I'm not.
Yep, I've seen it.
And there are 2 comedic Men in Black in that movie
Oh wow!
that took place way before all this. That kind of it almost feels like that was the spark for all of this.
For that to take place.
Yeah, for this independent, low budget alien movie.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It's a
Wow.
great film, by the way.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was Wikipedia or something. It said
That's
that
Miles Dyson stars in that, doesn't he?
I think
forget what
so.
that guy's name is. Yeah. Anyway,
Wikipedia or something said that John Landis was originally approached to do this movie,
whoa.
and he
wow.
turned it down because he said it was like the Blues Brothers with UFOs.
So he didn't want to do
He
it
did
then?
not. He turned it down at the time.
Oh yeah, the sunglasses, huh? It's almost like
Well, they're wearing
tailor-made
suits.
for
They're wearing
him. Yeah.
suits and yeah.
Suits and sunglasses.
So can you see Dan Aykroyd and John Belushi? No,
Yeah, right.
Yes,
Yes.
I could kind of see
I
it.
could kind of see
I could
it.
see him in the outfits and the sunglasses, but maybe the rest
Wouldn't
comes
change
with
a thing still.
No.
No.
I love
And then they
this
recruit
movie.
John Goodman to be the
Right,
third-
right. Yeah.
yes.
So yeah, who wrote it?
It was written by Ed Solomon, who we've talked about on the podcast before.
Yes.
We're all fanboys of Ed Solomon, I think.
fanboys.
What else did he write?
Bill and Ted and Bill and Ted 2 and many other fun things. Well, I guess it's not called Bill and Ted 2, is it?
Bogus Journey,
Bogus
Jamie.
Journey. Yeah.
Journey.
Yeah.
Get
I was going to call
right.
it Go to Hell, and I was like, that's not right.
I actually have the Go to Hell script signed by
Okay.
Alex Winter
Okay.
in my room.
Man.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That's
I'm
what
such a
popped in my
fan.
mind. I was like, Bill and Ted Go to Hell. That's not it.
Yeah.
I'll just call it Bill and Ted 2.
Right.
So, and we won't go back over it, but Ed, his career it started out in the sitcoms, and then he ended up doing Bill and Ted, and then he went on to a huge career. And they gave him this movie. I think it went to Sonnenfeld first, Barry Sonnenfeld to direct after Landis turned it down. He was coming off of the Addams Family movies. So they wanted to
So
bring
good.
that kind of tone.
He's really he had a 90s. Let's
He
just
was
say that.
on it.
He was
Yeah.
on in the 90s.
He was on
man.
it. He was on
On
it.
fire.
So after he came on, then they brought Ed to be the writer. I don't know. Did chicken and egg? I'm not sure who
Yeah,
came
the
first or what
history.
came second.
Yeah.
But Barry was brought on to do that. So Ed wrote it, and Ed's a solo writer. He wrote it all throughout. I've never really heard any other writers contributing or any punch ups.
He didn't do it with Chris Matheson.
He did not.
Okay.
He did not.
It feels like Ed Solomon.
Oh,
you know, like
100%.
yeah.
Yeah.
In all the right ways. I
Yes.
mean,
And
when
I've
I was watching that, I was like, I feel like this is just going to be the Bill and Ted podcast with a different premise.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
let's try our best not to make it
Yeah,
that,
yeah, yeah.
but yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm sure if we eventually do a Ghostbusters podcast, it'll be very
Yeah,
similar
I know.
to that.
No, I know.
Yeah.
But there's probably people listening to this who may not have heard the Bill and Ted episode, So
Yes, right.
it's worth bringing up all those points.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about the Ghostbusters of the 90s.
Yeah, exactly.
That's why I always-
it even has a cartoon.
I always consider that, even the cartoon. It even
Yeah.
had a very successful cartoon that was,
Yep. That
I
was,
love the cartoon.
like in the like spirit of the real Ghostbusters cartoon as well.
right.
You know,
No,
it feels
totally.
like they're like partners.
For
you know?
anyone listening, if you're a fan of the movie, find the cartoon. I don't know if
Cartoon's
it's
so
available, but
I love it.
yeah.
The
Highest
Men in Black
recommendation.
cartoon or the Ghostbusters?
The Men in
one?
Black
No,
cartoon.
I don't think I ever saw it.
No,
Yeah,
Jamie,
I
it's
don't know.
really
It's
it's super
just-
solid,
If
dude.
you like
I
the
know the
real
Ghostbusters
Ghostbusters
one, but yeah.
cartoon,
Yeah,
you'll
I'm a
love
fan
the
of
Men
that.
in Black cartoon.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's funny because this is the kind of movie, I've talked about it before, that I always wanted to write. It's kind of Men in Black, Ghostbusters, Galaxy Quest. They're the ones that always,
That's the
inspired me.
dream.
Yeah, I was
they're
going to
the
say
dream.
this is a Jamie Nash sweet spot episode here.
This is,
yeah.
and honestly, I kind of, after nobody would pay attention to those scripts, I probably, they probably ended up.
We're laughing.
That's probably where the Nickelodeon stuff comes from. Really, it's kind of shoot off of there for kids. It's kind of very
So
similar.
you get
Your
to stretch,
Nickelodeon one.
you
My
get to, you
Nickelodeon,
get
yeah.
to stretch those muscles.
Absolutely.
For a younger audience.
Absolutely. It was always a surprise when Nickelodeon said, "Yeah, you're really good at Nickelodeon stuff," because I had never watched Nickelodeon stuff.
Yeah.
But it kind of makes sense because it's just a little stretch from the Men in Black and stuff. The stuff I do for Nickelodeon.
Gotcha.
They're usually
It's really not far of a jump.
It isn't. It
Yeah,
isn't.
from Men in Black to Nickelodeon.
And look,
Yeah.
Savage Steve Holland is the other guy who he directed Santa Hunters, but he does a lot of Nickelodeon stuff, and you
Yeah.
could see kind of what his stuff is to Nickelodeon.
Yeah, no,
Right,
that's
right,
true.
yeah,
That's
right.
true.
Not to make this podcast about me.
Yeah.
There
It
was a-
always was,
it's-
Jamie.
well, the re-
That Jamie Nash
the-
magic.
You're right.
The reason, though, I mention it is like I always felt that Ghostbusters was interesting because it was less stylized, obviously, than Men in
Mhm.
Black or Galaxy Quest. It actually took place in a gritty New York City that felt
Yeah.
kind of real. And even though this one also takes place in New York City,
Yeah.
it's
This is
so
a great New York
stylized.
movie, though.
Yeah,
It's a great
definitely.
New
It's a
York
great
movie.
New York movie, yeah.
It's just this kind of painted New York, where Ghostbusters feels a little bit more like rugged New York or
Yeah.
something.
Also,
like,
Sonnenfeld is a much different director
He's a
than
different
Ivan
director.
Reitman. So
The style.
Yeah.
But even the people, like this movie, there's no normal people in it. Like they're all cartoons. Even
yeah.
that's why the cartoon works so well.
yeah, even the
Yeah.
doctor. But in Ghostbusters, you have not to make this about Ghostbusters, but Sigourney is normal.
She's very
and,
grounded.
and many of the characters are normal. And then there's the kind of wild characters within the normal. So
yeah.
I'd say
It's slightly
the
different.
normal here would have to be Will Smith at most.
Probably,
Yeah,
you're
he
probably
is
right.
the
He's the
audience
s-
surrogate.
Will, yeah, that's
Yeah.
the straight man in this movie
Yeah,
is
he's
one
the-
of the funniest people.
Yeah, in the story
right, yeah,
world.
in the world, right? Yeah,
He's rolling his eyes at all the goofiness. And
Right.
I always say that is a thing with comedy. Usually, you can't just have everybody be goofy, or it's usually one or the other. They rub against each other. So it's
Right.
like serious man in a crazy world, or it's crazy man in a serious world.
Mhm.
And I think Ghostbusters is a little bit more crazy people in a serious world.
Yeah.
And this one's the opposite. And I think
Yeah.
so. I think your point is
even though
well
he's
taken.
he's not a totally serious
totally
man,
yeah,
serious.
no, not at all.
but he's a
yeah.
grounded man.
He's grounded, right?
his-
He's a police officer
And-
that catches normal, everyday criminals,
jo-
not criminals who are aliens.
And the joke of his partner is that he's so grounded he's not normal.
That's
yes,
Right,
That's
yeah, right.
exactly.
He's
Well,
cartoonishly
right.
grounded.
Cartoonishly
yeah,
grounded.
Yeah, that's
right.
in the later.
Right.
Yeah.
So what's the log line? Let's talk about that.
yeah.
And I just did something really quick for this. I don't know why I was interested in the log line for this one, except to say it kind of, it's sort of perfect in some ways because it's an origin story, but it's also an origin story that has a very specific plot and obstacle
Yeah.
and stuff. So this is just something I whipped up crazy quick. After being recruited to an agency that secretly polices alien activity, a cocky cop, I don't know if I like cocky cop. That could be the title of my new screenplay.
Cocky gap.
Cobra.
Right.
And his by the book new partner must race to stop a dangerous invader from destroying the world or something along those lines. So it has an origin. The log line here would have to encompass both of them because I believe
Yeah.
they're equal protagonists in
Yeah.
this movie. Even though Will Smith's kind of our view into the world,
We
I think
actually
they're
learn
pretty equal.
more about Tommy Lee. Even in that little glimpse, we learn more about Tommy Lee Jones's before world character than we do about.
Yeah,
Will
and he's
Smith.
introduced first, which is kind
Yeah.
of telling. He's
It's
almost
very
in every
telling.
scene after Will is introduced.
No, I
in
mean
his incident.
everything we know about Will Smith is actually in your log line before he is recruited.
Yeah,
That's
You know what I mean? Like that.
Yeah.
There's not much to him before
Yeah.
that.
That's a
and
point
it's
true.
so. I think it's
It-
instructive that it works
It
without
works so
seeing-
well. Yes.
Yeah, it kind of informs his decision to choose to abandon life, that we
Mhm.
see no life other than what
Yes.
we're shown. His life is chasing down criminals.
So-
you know,
right.
And that the only reason I really wanted to do a log line for this one that I just did super quick was because it has a hero, but in this case there's two heroes.
yeah,
So they're both mentioned in the log line. Then there's a goal, which is to stop the dangerous invader. The obstacle is dangerous invaders. He's going to destroy the world, essentially. Stakes.
Yeah.
So it's all there. It's all very easy to figure out.
It's a clean setup. The only thing I did different, I think yours is super great. The only thing I changed was at the end I made the goal specific.
Okay, yeah.
So
I was just too lazy to
prevent
do it.
a giant, because I always go to the because we've talked about this before. So many people start writing their script without a solid log line, and then when they try to, that leads to problems because these hero antagonist goal stakes are not clearly defined, and then they try to retroactively make like a one sheet for this, and they can't,
Right.
because log lines work before, not after. You can't like reverse engineer a log line, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
And so like I always try to point to what is the filmable goal, and that belongs in the log line, and that'll make sure that you have us rooting for an achievement of that by story's end if you start with a log line that includes the filmable goal. So in this movie, the filmable goal is preventing the giant alien bug from leaving the planet with an object he plans to use to destroy this world and other worlds. The MacGuffin. Right?
And
so that's the only thing I changed.
No, that's great.
Yeah.
I mean, it even works for a marketing reason because, like, my super ambiguous stop a dangerous invader, that's actually a problem a lot of people have with marketing log lines, is that could be the coolest part of the movie.
Yeah.
And you could just be kind of glossing over it by saying, invader,
this
whatever.
thing,
yeah,
destroy the world.
So the more specific you can get about any part of the story, whether it's the heroes, without making it too wordy,
ridiculously wordy. Yeah, I think
that's a definite improvement.
So
sure.
So it's now that we've got the log line
out of the way. Yeah.
So it's
what does this movie
our work
do
is
best?
done here. Oh no.
Yeah. Well, it's a perfect movie. We don't need to really talk about it.
This movie is an entire. It's funny. I've been like holding back. I'm trying to hold back on using as many save the cat terms because I feel like we lean on them so heavily. But it's such an easy resource because I've been seeing a lot more anti save the cat rhetoric as like, more people connect with
since the new president,
right?
More people connect with the show and stuff. It's like I'm connecting with more people who talk about screenwriting on a regular basis.
Right.
Fuck save the cat. But one of my favorite things about that as a teaching tool is the fun and games section, right? And we read scripts all the time. I'm sure you read scripts in your class like this, where the fun and games is presented as a one-page event. And that's it, right?
Right.
But like this movie, what it does so well is it's an entire movie filled with fun and games, right? I mean, from start to finish.
Yes.
Even beyond Act 1 and Act 2, like the whole thing is fun and games, and that's premise delivery.
And a reminder that fun and games is really what makes these movies great.
Right.
Like,
the cheeseburgers.
The cheeseburgers. It's the part of the cheeseburger that tastes the best and why we actually watch these movies.
Right.
I feel like that's kind of like the theme of our show almost,
yeah,
right? Yeah.
We
Find
talk,
the fun
we
and
talk
games.
about the fun and games and
yeah.
And I think this movie also has like that superhero structure where he becomes a cop. So you want to give us a taste of what life would be like for being I'm calling him a cop, but a Men in Black. You want that,
Mib.
What's the job look like? What's the job? And they give us that like a superhero story would. Like, what does it feel like to be Spider-Man? And you want to kind of be almost episodic and montagey with it. You want to give us a couple glimpses of it. You don't just want to jump right into, let's fight the bug.
It takes its time.
Takes its time.
But it makes every moment of that fun.
Much like Ghostbusters does, and much like Superman the movie would do. It gives you some time to say, look, here's what it's like to be Superman every day, while also threading in this whole threat in the background, which I think I saved for later, but I called the pinch points and all that stuff.
Yeah.
It while they do that, it's almost like every other scene is the bug.
You're back to the villain's plan.
The villain's
is
plan.
Very easy to understand.
So the audience knows there's a promise that the two are going to collide.
Yep.
And it's threaded also into the episodic elements as well. There's little hints of it all over the place.
Yeah, of course.
It does what's interesting is Bill and Ted doesn't have an overarching villain. It has like very minor villains, and this one like does all the same things that Bill and Ted does from a premise delivery standpoint. Plus, it gives us an awesome villain, right?
Right.
And like that in itself, I'm gonna
with a
backtrack in
ticking
a
clock
second.
mechanism.
Yeah, that
There's a
is
ticking
too.
clock. It
Yes,
has to save the cat,
Jesus
right?
Christ. Yes, that's
Let's save the cat.
Like who's the villain of the story? I mean, premise delivery. A giant alien cockroach invades New York City. I mean, that's like in the construction. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
What is the perfect villain for this movie that takes place in New York City with 2 men in black agents? A giant cockroach.
It's either a rat or a cockroach.
Right?
Pick
Yeah,
one.
it's that works perfectly for this specific premise. So I had a client. I wanted to talk about premise delivery, like that doesn't work and why it doesn't work. I had a client. I'm currently working on notes for this script right now, and I sent her a message and I said, I'm recording a podcast. I won't use the exact premise, but can you please give me permission? And she said yes. So thank you.
Her name may or
listening.
may not be Diablo Cody.
Diablo Cody. Yeah. So I
Big time Jimmy.
what I see a lot all the time. It's like maybe the primary problem with the scripts I get that don't work is they have a fantastic premise, right?
Mhm.
You hear the idea, shit writes itself, right? And sells itself. You can see the poster, you can see the trailer moments, right? And then you get the script, and they may even have a super well constructed setup. And then that's it. You don't see the trailer moments. You don't see anything that would belong on a poster. All the things inherent to this awesome premise
Right.
were not shown. We're shown some other movie because either the writer hasn't taken the time to do the list building that we can go down this list and the list building they do to create those poster moments and these perfect elements that like maximize on the promise of the premise, or the writer doesn't trust it, right? They have this awesome idea
And they don't trust
and
the
they
premise,
just
right.
don't have faith in the idea, so they abandon the idea at some point in the story. So I'm currently reading this script, and it is a buddy comedy, right? That takes place. It's not like in the Army now at all, but it takes place in a wartime setting, and it's buddy comedy, right? It's an awesome premise that I don't want to spoil, but that's enough. The setup is how these buddies get into the wartime setting. And then once we're placed into the wartime setting, they're separated. And for the next whole rest of the movie, the buddies are only on screen together in this supposed buddy combat comedy for 13 pages of the whole script. So this script had this awesome setup that gets these buddies in this combat situation, and since we don't actually ever see them together, it is unable to deliver on the promise of that premise. So
it has no heart.
Well, no,
Kinda
it's just
thing.
it understands the idea that it has, but it doesn't understand how to deliver on that. Right?
Why that idea is good.
Why that? Yeah.
Okay.
And
I just
there are
got a
shades
great
of
idea.
So what it is those 13 pages are awesome, right? Those 13 pages where they're together are fantastic, right? And you're like, the problem is like the whole script needs to be those 13 pages, right? And this movie, I mean, like, look at the premise delivery. Like, extraordinary celebrities are actual aliens. A cop foot chase ends with an alien climbing a building from ground to ceiling immediately.
The Guggenheim. Right.
Like any New York City cop chase we'd seen. We've never seen one end like this, right?
Right.
A UFO crash lands on a farm, and then the alien takes over the farmer's body. I mean, that's premise delivery. A pawn shop jeweler in New York City is actually an alien's arms dealer. A giant alien bug shows down with a pest control exterminator, then steals his truck, and that becomes the giant alien bug's like villain. Right. I mean, this is premise delivery.
It's the whiteboard. The whiteboard. Yeah,
right?
you filled out the whiteboard list. Right.
So you get your whiteboard and you say, we got a movie about 2 men in black agents in New York City. What does that look like, right? And this, that you can tell
also,
they made the list.
Separately
right?
to your point too, like you said, how about them separating? The entire movie is about them being together and not meshing well.
Imagine this movie
until we realize they
if
do
Tommy
actually.
Lee Jones and Will Smith weren't together.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah, the movie's sold on the two of them.
And I read scripts a lot that do that very thing. Yeah.
The premise also it's almost threefold in this case too. You have the alien stuff, the comedy alien stuff in New York.
And then you have Dragnet.
You have Dragnet.
Dragnet.
You
It's
have,
Dragnet. It's
Yeah,
Dragnet.
yeah.
Yeah.
You have basically what's it like to be a Men in Black, the weapons, the research,
The underground
crew,
world.
the underground world.
Yeah.
And then I think New York is also thrown into the mix.
Yeah.
And to
Why is New
Kind of-
York
Yes, the
weird?
New York, a New
Let's-
York
Let's explain on the whiteboard why New York is
Right.
so weird.
That's
making the
And this-
extraordinary ordinary. I mean,
And this-
making the ordinary extraordinary over and
Right.
over and over again.
So,
Right.
so then it's not only about writing lists for each of those things, but then they cross over and you can add and do all that kind of fun
Yeah.
stuff too.
Yeah.
By the way, I remember another thing. Barry Sonnenfeld, originally the script was, so maybe Ed Solomon was on it before. Originally the script took place all over the U.S.
Yes.
Barry
Yeah.
Sonnenfeld's idea to put it in New York.
Oh, it's
Keep it in New
perfect
York.
in New
Yeah.
York.
There's
That's
also, I
such
don't
a
know the
great
exact
choice.
story, but I know that the ending was rewritten and rejiggered last minute.
Oh.
I
Wow.
know that.
I didn't know.
So it was originally
So
a different
clean-
ending. It's a clean. You would
clean
never
ending, yeah.
know, but I remember because Men in Black 3 was being filmed without the ending being finished written,
Oh.
and there was a guy who in an interview attacked Sonnenfeld about it, and he's like, "Dude, we didn't have an ending for the first one, and it worked.
Yeah.
we wrote it on the fly, and we got there. You know."
Wow.
So I remember
Yeah.
that specific.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Oh.
yeah, this premise delivery and even the dialogue, like, you know, you want to come up with dialogue that only works to your specific premise, right? And
Right.
there's like a ton of that here. Like Jay says to Kay, you know Elvis is dead, right? And he says Elvis is not dead. He just went home, right? That works in this movie, right?
Right.
And Jay says like a galactic standard week. How the hell long is that? And
30
Kay says 1 hour.
Right.
Right. I mean, these are the types of things that was in the list building, right? Like,
Mhm.
what are some things we could have them say that could only be said in this movie? You know, it's just shit writes itself. It's really impressive.
I don't know this, but I would love to know if they were written with these actors in mind, because it's one of those either lightning in a bottle where
Yeah.
the two of them just were perfect,
Yeah.
or it's I could easily believe that they were both written for.
I heard the alternative casting for this, and that doesn't mean that the script wasn't
Oh, what
rewritten.
was it?
I can't remember. It was really interesting too.
Damn,
Bring it up
Jamie.
and don't remember
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to look it up.
He shared that nugget.
Well, it was Tommy Lee Jones and then someone else, wasn't it?
I have to look it up. Now I have to look it up. I'll look it up as we talk.
Okay.
But
Well, let's get to character arcs, because we kind of touched on it first
Yeah,
with
a little bit.
with Jay, how he's kind of a no-name man before. He's just a cop. He's a
yeah.
good cop. He's a little bit hard-bitten. We don't know anything about his home or family,
Yeah.
and that kind of works for his decision.
Right.
Right. Yeah, but one of the things I like best about this movie is that we have the whole recruitment sequence, which
Yeah.
again is premise delivery.
Right. Yeah.
And in that premise delivery, like they're testing him for his own personality,
Right.
which tells the audience who he is.
Who he is.
He's the
right.
guy that would pull a table over.
Yeah.
He's the guy that would shoot the girl holding quantum physics books.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
the one thing
And that reveals character.
That
yeah,
reveals
so-
character so well about
well.
who Jay is.
Yeah,
right.
the one
It's awesome.
the
Yeah,
one
it
thing
is.
related to the arcs as well is this is like in the Save the Cat terminology. This is like one of those buddy love kind of movies.
Yeah.
And buddy love movies typically have two equally weighted characters
Mm-hmm.
that both have kind of character arcs or some version. Usually it's kind of they're both half of a person split down the middle, and together they'd be a whole person or something like that. So they're struggling over the same issue in some ways. When I rewatched this movie, this is the one thing I wanted to say. It doesn't have like most buddy love movies would have this thing at the center that would be a big conflict, right? And while they have tension between them, there really isn't a conflict. It's more
it's just tonal.
yeah,
It's not.
it's more of a
Yeah.
mentor-teacher relationship.
I would
Yeah.
almost say father-son. to be
Father-son.
honest, but yeah.
It's not quite, but it's it could be Qui-Gon and Obi. No, it could be Miyagi and Karate Kid, but Training Day or something like
yeah,
this.
yeah.
Actually, Miyagi and Karate Kid's not too bad.
That was the first one I thought of when I was sitting.
Yeah.
It feels like it could be that. There's not as much like wisdom imparted, I don't think, as much as it's just here's the job, you're good at it. It's
yeah.
and I don't know that Will Smith's character has a lot. Like he doesn't have a big problem at the beginning.
That's
that
what
he needs to
we don't
solve.
know much.
He-
I think, yeah,
He doesn't arc this huge amount. I think he matures
yeah.
in some ways.
He's
he
almost-
takes on the responsibility.
Can I compare?
That's what I think it is. I think it's a responsibility arc, and I think it's oddly and this is more thematic, but it's knowing. It's about knowledge,
Mhm.
right? And it's about like there's tons of thematic stuff that Kay says to Jay about this is kind of getting into the moral premise. And the
Yeah.
moral premise, there's a great article on this from the moral premise,
Right.
and that's where I got some of this stuff from. But I disagree with some of this stuff, so I've changed a little bit of it. But it's basically like the moral premise guy. What is that guy's name?
Stanley Williams.
Stanley Williams says that the theme of this movie is too much knowledge leads to fear, while just enough knowledge allows for a level of happiness, right? And
That's the moral premise of Men in Black.
Of Men in Black.
Okay.
And then and Will Smith is a man who's like the rest of us.
who's
He
in
has
the
no
dark.
knowledge. He's completely in the dark. Therefore, he's allowed to have like free will and live his life however he wants. And this movie suggests that like once he learns what he learns,
He can't do that.
he can't
Yeah.
ever go back to being a guy who just lives the life he wants. He has like a responsibility to take action and keep these people safe now that he knows what he knows. Like the omniscient, aspect of that changes him as a character.
Right.
And then Tommy Lee Jones goes from a guy who in the beginning knows everything to in the end, he's ignorance is bliss, right? He gets
Yeah.
to live out his life with the one he loves. So for me, I think it's like a taking responsibility arc. And then Tommy Lee Jones kind of does the Captain America thing where he's like, I'm resting, I'm done, I'm retiring
That's
from
so
this
good.
responsibility.
Yeah.
It's Captain America. It's very
You know,
very much like
and-
Captain
I thought
America.
the
I
same
love
thing.
what you just said, and I agree with it. And I would have said something different. I would have said it was about one man finding his family and another one getting it back.
Oh, that's good too, though. That works too.
Kind of how I always viewed it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because Jay doesn't have a family.
Yeah,
Men in Black becomes such.
becomes his family,
and then Tommy
yeah.
Lee Jones is a man who left his family behind.
Yeah, because he
Right.
had one before.
He had one, and he gets
Yeah,
it back at
before
the
he
end.
was
Right. Yeah.
enlisted in this.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
But there's some great lines that express the theme. Kay says, "There's always an Archillian battle cruiser, or blah 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 blah, and the only way these people get on with their happy lives is that they don't know about it." And like in the end, that's what he's building to.
Yeah.
And Kay says, at the very end, he says, "I just went down the gullet of a megastellar cockroach. That's one of 100 memories I don't want." So he wants to
And-
not have the burden of the responsibility, right?
You're right.
Yeah.
I was going to say, since we're here and I don't really see another place to talk about it, I wanted to talk about, we've talked about comedy movies before
Yeah.
and everything. And this movie is a really great example of, it's not just about the jokes. It's a movie about actual story. And while most scenes have a central joke about them, I think it's great that there is that scene that you're talking about
Yeah.
right now that has no jokes in it. It is actually, you know what I'm saying? It's
There's
deliv-
multiple ones
it's-
like that.
there-
Heart.
yeah, but
The
I'm-
scene on the bench, yeah.
well, the scene on the bench is what I was speaking of. Like, if it's a movie that's just about the premise and why it's funny, it's not going to work. Hence, Men in Black 2. And that's Sonnenfeld even said that about Men in Black 2. He's like, that was my mistake.
Mhm.
Is that
Mhm.
I didn't make a movie, I made a comedy.
Yeah.
Men in Black is still a great movie
Yeah. on
with
its
comedy
own.
in it, and the reason is scenes like that
Yeah.
are in it.
Yeah.
The heart is there.
The heart.
The heart is there, and that's also just a great line about a person is smart, people are dumb. It's just like a genius
Oh
line.
yeah.
Right. I just wanted to point that
a
out
person is smart. People are
because
yeah.
I know, like, I don't know if people generally think of Men in Black as a straight up comedy, but I think it's important to talk about.
It's
that.
definitely not just Screwball. It's
not Screwball.
yeah.
Mhm.
It's
Mhm.
not Screwball, but like obviously they got away. The next one was like, what's funny? They stopped worrying about the heart.
Right, and it'll
Yeah.
be interesting to see where they take the fourth one and what
Yeah.
it follows and what it breaks, what molds it breaks from this model.
Yeah.
Because the other ones are just this regurgitated as that Honest Trailers shows.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I still argue the third one got it right, but anyway.
I love the third
I
one.
love the third one too.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's talk about the protagonists.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of just did.
I guess we did, really,
Yeah,
didn't we?
Yeah, we talked about them.
Then let's get into Act 2.
Yeah,
Pinch points, Jamie, you want to talk about
Yeah,
pinch points?
Yeah, and I did kind of mention those a second ago, but I'll define them at least.
Yeah.
A pinch point is something out of Sid Field that isn't in Save the Cat, actually. But he describes as one of the pinch points, the first one, which is in Act 2, is usually a moment that shows the threat to come, and it's usually like the midpoint of the fun and games almost.
Right, right.
Okay.
So I always like to kind of have that in the back of my mind, that if you have a fun and games that might be episodic or not full of tension or something, to have that hint of the big monster coming. And what I was saying again with Men in Black is they actually almost do an alternating. They do more than just a pinch point. It keeps coming at you. They keep dealing villain cards at you. So
we're constantly allowed to track his progress.
Yeah.
Yeah.
more so than like, I'm trying to just by comparison, like Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
I'm not exactly sure what that section is. Probably the Twinkie speech or something.
Yeah.
like
Right,
that.
right,
You know,
yeah.
it's probably like, you know, something bad's about to happen.
Yeah.
You know, that's probably the midpoint of the fun and games of Ghostbusters.
And you're saying that the one in Men in Black is
the one in Men in Black, they do several. It's just all the bug scenes. You know,
all the
they're-
bugs.
Yeah.
Okay,
they're-
the
He's
bugs.
closing.
Oh, you're saying that. Okay.
Yeah.
He's closing in.
He's closing in,
on
he's getting
the
stronger.
Orion's belt. Yes.
But it's a key not to forget that in your fun and games. So if your
The
fun
height
and
might be
games
the
is all that-
pierogi scene.
What's that?
That might be the
pierogi
biggest
scene.
pinch point.
Okay. Yeah.
That's great. That's one of my favorite premise delivery moments too. Two aliens sitting at a diner bitching about how much they hate humans and how much they hate Earth, but they love shitty diner food.
Right, exactly.
It's awesome. Like that works in this movie, you know.
Also,
It's great.
it's great because the general premise delivery of the fact that no one notices half the shit happening because they're so
right.
they're so
New York
numb.
Is so
New York
yes,
is numb to it, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
But by the way,
Some
I
weirdness.
finally found the casting.
Okay, let's
Okay,
hear it.
But this never really went anywhere. But originally being considered was Clint Eastwood
For the
And-
Tommy
and
Lee
Chris
Jones.
O'Donnell. They were going to be the
Chris
two.
O'Donnell.
Well, Eastwood might
You
have
could-
worked.
You could
but
see it. You could see
just
it. Yeah.
No one could be as perfect as these two, but
Yeah.
yeah. But Clint Eastwood might have worked. Chris O'Donnell would not have worked. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Well,
not
Yowza.
that's not great.
He had his moment back
He
then.
did.
He was
he
in,
did. Good
They were
old
putting
Robin.
in stuff.
Scent of a woman.
So we got through. We talked about escalation.
Did we talk? Were we going to talk about escalation before or after the all is lost?
Want to talk about All Is Lost, Jamie?
Yeah, sure. And what I was thinking in this one that is unique, it's not unique necessarily, but I think it's a good example of All Is Lost because I see this happen with students all the time too, is a lot of times people debate what to do with the All Is Lost, to have it be the personal All Is Lost or have it be the macro plot
All Is
Lost.
Lost, right?
And what I love about this
Yeah.
one is it does both at the same time. And that's always my answer. If you can put those two together at the same spot or immediately back to back, that's the key. So in this one, you have the doctor being taken, which is an
Yeah.
all the law. It's, it gets personal. Here's
Yeah.
somebody they know that's personally in danger. But then also, of course, the entire galaxy or whatever is in
Yeah.
jeopardy. So both of those occur at the same moment. Anyway, it's just something I see all the time because I see people like beat the projects out and they find an all is lost, but sometimes it's the personal one, but the macro one doesn't come to later,
Right.
and they don't know what to do. So if you
this
can,
is a perfect one. It blends.
yeah,
both
it blends
together.
both. So when I saw it, I was like, oh,
That's
they got it.
awesome.
They got it right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I guess the relationship is established between her and Jay.
Definitely,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And he's
Yeah.
concerned because Tommy Lee Jones keeps flashing her over and over again. And
She has a history with the Men in
She has a
Black.
history, yes.
Yeah, yeah. Another genius whiteboard moment
Yeah.
that the coroner has to be the one to take the brunt
I love
of
it.
the memories wipes.
Yeah.
right. It's just great stuff.
And then there's the other classic break. It has a classic break into three. Like people get confused. They ask about break into threes all the time.
Can you explain a break into three?
Sure. And so break into three, usually there is an all is lost moment. So
Mm-hmm.
Obi-Wan Kenobi's dead. In this case, the bug goes away with the galaxy and and he's got the doctor on his shoulder, so that's the all is
For a
lost.
snack. Right.
And it
For a snack.
seems like that's it. Game over, right? But then a new piece of information usually has to show up to spin us into Act 3. There has to be some new thing,
piece of information.
new discovery, new connection.
And pay up and a set off in this case.
Yeah.
A lot of times it's this classic payoff. That's usually what it is. It's that thing where you look, and I can't tell you, there's probably a million times where it is something like a painting or a picture, and you go, aha, and there's like a match cut that goes from the one to the
Yeah.
next.
Right. Yeah.
So this one was almost it was cool, but almost cliche in a way enough
Yeah,
that I
yeah.
wanted to point it out because it was almost like the classic, like it almost could be the epitome of one of these moments where he looks
It was
at that
also
wall.
20 years ago.
It
so,
was.
You know what I mean?
They
Yeah.
still do it.
They
do
still
it.
do it. Yeah.
Still do
It's they still do this, and everything I ever watch, and I groan when I see it, is the things still do the hide the tape recorder in the pockets, especially now
I've
with
done it
phones.
in my own movie.
Especially with phones now, they always do it.
It's all that. Yeah.
Yeah, but anyway, so in this one, of course, they look at the wall. I guess it's like the World's Fair kind of thing.
It's a painting of the World's Fair.
painting of the World's Fair, and he says, "What, do those still work or something?"
Yeah.
Do those
then-
still work? You're right.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then they cut
Mhm.
to it. So
And earlier in the
that's
movie,
breaking
they'd
through.
note that the World's
That
Fair.
World's Fair
Fair
was that's
Yeah.
alien ships. Yeah, it's
That's
a
right.
great setup
Yeah.
earlier.
Yeah.
And then they make a decision in action. That's like
And
another
that's
important part of it.
Right from there, we can jump to the 5-point finale.
Yeah.
Not that we're going to break that down.
No, but that is, yeah, it hops right in. Then they
five.
they hit the red button,
Mhm.
you know, and it just, yeah, they gear up. They have the preparing to storm the castle. Yeah, it's all there.
Does the doctor have a name in the movie?
Yeah, Lauren.
Lauren.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I was looking at the script, and her name is Dr. Hot Lady.
Yeah, in the script it's Dr. Hotley.
Yeah.
No,
It's
she had-
in the movie.
Is
It's
that- do
it's
they
Laurel,
never-
not Lauren.
Did they ever
Laurel.
bring up Dr. Hot Lady in the movie?
No,
Yeah.
no.
No,
Like,
but
'cause I
in the
read it
script,
out.
And she
it is.
becomes L, right?
I think so. Yeah,
Yeah, 'cause that's what she was in the
in
cartoon.
like-
yeah.
I was
Yeah.
like, when I was reading
Yes.
the script,
Yeah.
when I was reading the script for this, I was like, I don't remember Dr. Hot Lady.
Yeah,
Dr.
Dr.
Hot
Hot
Lady.
I was like, I
not
would
in
have
there.
remembered
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, no.
Also, that's
not
kind of.
cool.
I'm glad it's not in there.
I'm
That's
so
not,
glad they
Says a
did.
little
that's
more,
not okay.
a little more
I hope
Zucker
the
brothers.
actress or someone
Ugh.
involved was like, absolutely not.
Yeah.
I wanted to bring up because we've talked about so many horror movies and we've never brought this up. The praise of the killer speech. Are you familiar with this?
No.
Jamie?
No,
no,
explain.
no.
Explain.
Okay, so this is something I learned in a Robert McKee, another regurgitation of a lesson, but something I took the Robert McKee thriller seminar like 25 years ago, which we broke down specifically 7, and there's a great one in 7. A praise of the killer speech is essentially you have somebody who's really strong in your movie, a very strong and powerful character, talk about how strong and powerful the antagonist is. And that gives us this extra sense of gravitas. I'm really big on not relying on hearsay evidence of people talking about somebody doing something and showing, but in this case, it works very well. And I'll give you the example from this movie and then from other movies. So Jay says, it's the Jay Bug speech. He says, bugs thrive on carnage, Tiger. They consume, infest, destroy, live off the death and destruction of other species. Imagine a giant cockroach with unlimited strength, a massive inferiority complex, and a real short temper is tearing up Manhattan in a brand new Edgar suit. Does that sound like fun to you? Like that, hearing
It's
Jay
like so
say
efficient.
that, hearing Tommy Lee Jones's Jay, who's not impressed by anything in the movie, and that's like, that's his comic. That's one of his comic obsessions, his lack of being impressed by
Yeah, yeah.
anything. It's very impactful, right? So we have this sense of extra. It makes us go take pause,
Right, yeah.
and fear the villain. So there's some great ones in cinematic history. The Loomis about Michael Myers, where he's
Yeah.
like, I studied him for 15 years. I met this 6-year-old child with this blank, pale, emotionless face and the blackest eyes, the devil's eyes, blah, blah, blah. I realized what was living behind that boy's eyes was purely and simply evil.
You're gonna say Jaws, aren't you?
No, and there's a great one in Jaws.
I was
but
gonna say the Jaws speech, right?
The Jaws speech, the raptor speech from Dr. Grant, where it's like, there you are alive when they begin to eat you with the claw. So we fear the raptor before we ever see the raptor. Kyle Reese about the Terminator is like my favorite one, where he says, listen and understand, the Terminator is out there. It can't be bargained with. It can't be reasoned with. It doesn't feel pity or remorse or fear, and it will absolutely not stop ever until you are dead.
Right.
And that's like the strongest character in the movie is saying that
Right,
in
right.
fear of the antagonist. So Jay, that praise this killer speech is like perfect. It couldn't be more perfect. So
Especially for the audience, for us.
yeah.
Right? If
Yeah.
Tommy Lee Jones says it,
Yeah, exactly.
Right, you believe it,
You
you listen.
believe it, and that's
Yeah.
important.
He's
Choosing the
scared.
right character to say it, because if
Right.
you just have like some sheepish character who's scared of everything saying
No.
that, you're like, I mean, you're scared of everything. So I thought it was finally we could talk about this. I've been wanting to. Bring
Oh,
this
that's
up for
I'd
several
never heard of
episodes.
that
Yeah.
term before. That's
It's
awesome.
very effective, and sometimes I've even in the past when we've written like slasher movies and stuff, I'll write the praise of the killer speech first and kind of try to build a villain around that praise of the skill. It's almost like you could riff on a praise of the killer speech and then like create a villain around it. It's a fun exercise.
Yeah, it's great.
This movie kind of does that, actually.
Yeah.
I mean, it proves to us that he was right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And the whole
Yeah.
movie, it
The whole
spends
movie's
time
proving
Jay's
that it was
fears
that.
and warnings, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
For some reason, it reminds me of one of my favorite moments that I rip off all the time. It's not a praise the killer speech, but it's in the third Indiana Jones movie, Last Crusade, when he gives that speech about
Well, Martin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it cuts. And then it
He's
cuts.
got
to
the
him
grail
lost.
already, and he's like, "Does anyone know what I'm saying?"
It's like my favorite cinematic moment of all time. I think
That's a great, and that's a great play on it.
Yep,
It is.
exactly.
Yes, in a way.
Yeah, definitely.
That's kind of it shows how smart it is, actually.
Yeah.
yeah,
Right. Yeah.
really smart. Yeah.
You guys want to talk about comic obsessions?
I want to talk about escalation and then
Let's talk about
now we're going to
escalation. Yes,
So we
let's do
have
that.
it's another thing we haven't talked about, and I think this one has like the perfect example of escalation that like kind of encapsulates what to do with it. So I'll give you a bad example, and I use like a great movie I love.
Okay.
Okay. Blade
Okay.
is like the most classic example of poor escalation, and that is it gives you the best scene in the movie first. Right, and nothing that happens after that lives up or could possibly live up to that
first
opening scene. Right?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
I don't know many people you would ask who's like would think that that isn't the best scene in the whole movie. He has to kill like 30 people. Like he is like at his most peak of complications that he has to overcome, showing his powers.
Right.
It's
right.
just
right.
it's so awesome, and then the movie just de-escalates from there. It escalates again, but it never gets back to that level.
Mhm.
And I see this a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I see this in a lot of scripts where that end scene. Okay, so the example I want to give, this movie escalates from start to finish. Everything gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and the premise delivery gets more and more intense, and the tension gets bigger. It just keeps getting harder and harder for the characters. But to show you what I mean, the movie starts with an alien trying to sneak across the border in a truck and getting shot in an attempt to kill a border patrol agent. And the movie ends with an alien trying to fly off the planet and sneak through the border and be followed by an epic monster transformation, a fight, and eventually gets blown to smithereens while attempting to kill a border patrol agent or Men in Black. You know, that's
It's literally
essentially
the
what
same
the
thing,
same
just
thing.
more bigger
Right.
stakes and huger.
Just like, yeah, it's the same scenario, but with escalated premise delivery. And that is escalation to a T, right? And
Yeah.
and what I see is a script that will give me that end scene with the spaceship on page 30. And then the next 40 pages, nothing as cool as that will happen.
It's really weird because it's almost this is intuitive almost, it seems, right?
Yeah.
And I mean it crosses over to other places besides whether
It
it's
seems that's like a cheeseburger thing you just
Yeah.
do.
a firework
Right.
Yeah.
firework display, a concert. You know, you don't
Yeah.
start with your best song.
No,
You don't open up
right.
like, let's start
That's
with
a
the best
great
song.
parallel.
Yeah. However, there is this weird thing that there is a weird science to concerts. You start with the second best song, and then
Yeah.
you save the best song for last,
Yeah.
and then you groove up and and
The
do it.
hits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dude, that's a great parallel for escalation.
A greatest
concert.
hits album.
As a juggler, I do not start with chainsaws on a unicycle as my open. You got to save it. Save the chainsaws on the unicycle.
So this script, the same script that I used as the premise delivery example, I asked her if I could use it for this escalation note too. Okay, so back to the buddy. It's a buddy comedy in combat, right?
Right. Yeah.
We have a great setup. It's awesome. Places us in combat. The first scene in combat, they go to this village mission, and it's funny, and it's action-packed. It's entertaining. Belongs on the poster. Belongs in the trailer. And then the next 10 pages are training montage.
Mm-hmm.
So
like, why are
you
they
go
training if they're so
from-
good at everything, right?
So you go from the action and the tension and the premise delivery is ratcheting up and we're building, and then we just de-escalate to them training and we're seeing things that are less entertaining, that don't deliver on the promise of the premise, and it's still funny, and it's still worthy in the story, but it comes at the wrong time, you know. And I see this all the time. This is another thing I see so common, where like it's like the big moments are placed in the wrong order. So we have we don't have this rising and falling feeling. We just have this huge big rise and fall, and then nothing, and then we're just flat. And then 30, 40 pages later, we get something that's almost as big as that thing we saw on page 30, you know? So
Wow.
it's just, it's such a common problem, dude. And that concert example, I'm going to use that. That's great.
Yeah. Because I'm trying to think, like, not to sound like a Twitter troll or anything, but, you know, I was trying to think of why, like, a movie like, and you could say that it's an anomaly and just don't use it as well, but like Saving Private Ryan is a good example. When we were saying the military, I was like, oh, I know a military movie that starts out with the greatest 15 minutes of cinema I've ever seen.
Yeah.
But honestly, I'm not sure that it, even though I love that movie, I'm not sure it does ever get back to the emotional point.
You're right.
I'm not sure that it.
Well,
You're right.
While I love the movie, I'm not sure that
It
totally,
works,
quote unquote,
despite of the lack of escalation.
because it's almost a prologue.
And
in
there
some
is
ways,
escalation from there on.
Yeah.
But that's almost like the whole movie is a response to those events.
Yeah.
Like that's sort of like its own, like you said, it's like a prologue
Right.
more than
I know people criticize like Raiders of the Lost Ark for a similar problem. The critics that have,
Yeah.
like it never got above that first.
That's a
10
good
minutes.
point.
But
I like
you know,
hearing these. I like hearing these exceptions that are fucking amazing movies, like The Blade.
Yeah,
you know?
right.
But
yeah.
there is something to be said about like, it's kind of a bummer that Blade never gets back to that opening scene.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it's almost like that's, if you're gonna do it that way, it better be the opening scene. You know, that's
right.
kind of
If you
what
put it, but
I
I
think-
like I said,
well,
I
with-
said-
with like
everybody's
we're
attention.
just kind of we are talking about kind of like you know, with Saving Private Ryan, it's enormously an emotional.
right.
There's nothing emotional in the beginning as much as
Absolutely.
the ending of Saving
Absolutely,
Private Ryan.
I agree.
Right.
I mean, viscerally, it's just like nothing is equal to Saving Private Ryan in the
Yeah,
beginning.
no, in the
Oh,
beginning.
like nothing
But yeah.
ever.
But
you know? It's
everybody's
like
pretty nameless. You can't tell
you're
who they
watching
are.
a scene of war,
Right.
whereas at the end, it's big in only its emotion. It's not.
Yeah,
it's not
all
about that.
the characters were invested
Yep.
in all of their
Exactly.
success, and in the beginning, we're less invested in.
That's how you make
specific
that-
journeys.
That can work like that. You can
Yeah.
have your. That's how, the only way,
Yeah,
really,
yeah,
it should
yeah.
work like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
With Blade, it kind of doesn't work as much.
Yeah.
but
I still love the movie.
Blade's not Saving Private Ryan, so it
Yeah.
doesn't matter. Yeah,
I just
right.
we've never talked about escalation. This movie is like a superb example of escalation. You know, from scene to scene, it just continues to escalate, and then it ends as the exact same scenario as how it begins,
Mhm.
but bigger
Mhm.
and badder and
More,
more,
bigger
and-
stakes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
It's just something.
and it means more. It means more to J
Right.
and K that they win.
Yeah,
Yeah.
not remembering Blade well enough, but maybe that is the thing that Blade might do, is the stakes are
The
bigger in the
personal
end.
stakes are probably
Yeah.
bigger.
Like whatever.
Well, the stakes of the fight are bigger.
Deacon
Yeah.
Frost, yeah.
He's got to stop. He's got to save the world.
Yeah, he's got to save.
He's got to save the world versus
Right.
take out a
The
nightclub.
context is different.
Context is what
Complete-
the escalation's about.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
not the cinematic awesomeness.
Yeah,
I guess.
we put it in
No,
the
yeah,
of
yeah.
the moments. Yeah,
right.
That's, well, there
no,
you
I
go.
think it's a
But
best
that's.
practice.
But we are making movies, and they're a visual medium,
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's something to consider too.
Though I think cinematic awesomeness is best
yeah,
programmed.
Yeah.
Like you say.
No, I'm
These are-
agreeing. I'm
these-
just saying.
no,
there's
these are
like a
exceptions.
concert.
These
Yeah.
are exceptions to the rule, but
Yeah.
we're just trying to noodle why they still work
Yeah.
just fine. But
Yeah,
I think if you have both, then that's
I like
usually your
discussing
best
the
bet.
exceptions because
It's
the
usually your best
exceptions
bet.
are what people always bring up when I bring up a problem. You know, so
You could argue
it's fun to
Jurassic
figure out.
Park's best action scenes are not at the end,
So
Right.
that's
right?
true.
I mean, you've got the car chase and
Yeah.
the raptors and everything. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's not at the end of the movie, but it's the emotional ending of the movie.
That's a good call.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's how you write it.
Yeah,
That's really it. But I'm gonna say that for the most part, the safe bet would be what Jamie's saying. What
Yeah.
what Men in Black does.
Mhm.
It'd be interesting just to write out like your beginning stakes and
for
your
other
end stakes
things,
and,
and to
Yeah.
see how other scenarios are mirrored in the movie too.
Certainly, like every Marvel movie does it that way,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
Star Wars or something like that. But,
right. Well, that's what a normal movie does. It's the endings.
It's pretty rare to find the ones. The only reason Saving Private Ryan even came to mind was because you were talking about the military. You know.
In military. And this one that the example I was using is a comedy.
If I was gonna point to where escalation doesn't work as opposed to Men in Black, I would say like the Transformers movies, where if the entire movie is an explosion. Do you know what I'm saying? There's no.
That makes sense.
Not that and if you have no emotion either, so it doesn't matter, right?
But I know this isn't the fireworks podcast, but I always thought fireworks would be a lot better if they just fired them all off at once. Like, who needs to watch one or two
at a time?
Just blast them all off. Like give them like a 2-minute time limit. Just take the whole 45-minute thing and just start firing.
Just the whole sky.
I mean, who has time for 30 minutes of fireworks? Just blast them.
That's great. It's Jamie Nash with great fireworks info, but terrible writing info. Do it all at the same time.
If you ever come to my fireworks,
the setup and the payoff all at once.
All at once.
The person starts with their problem and fixes their problem all at the same time.
All at once.
At the same time.
Split screen.
Do you want to talk about comic obsessions?
Yeah, I do. Did you guys, instead of me trying to hash it out, I want to see if you guys
what are the two main characters' comic obsessions?
I have a terrible time figuring out the words, you know what I mean? The words to it.
To put to what you're watching.
It's kind of like a theme's hard to do that with, too.
A theme is.
You can feel it, but you can't. What's the words? What's the words?
Yeah.
Because Tommy Lee Jones, it's kind of his seriousness, his what's the word? Emotionless. I don't know what.
Does he have a comic obsession?
I think so.
What is it?
He's so focused on keeping their secrets above all things and getting the job done that he has no understanding of how serious he is and deadpan that he is. Yeah. You know, he's serious to a fault.
And he literally, his story, his arc is that he left his life to the cause.
Yes.
That's how serious this man is.
He is. Yeah. He's serious to a fault, and he has no idea.
I would almost feel like I don't know how to put this in words again, but it's like it's a job, a very serious job to him.
Yeah.
He's an awesome employee of the year.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
For life.
How about just saying his obsession is no nonsense about the job?
That's
probably
no nonsense.
No nonsense.
But it's just like he's completely unimpressed by anything, right? But he like doesn't realize that like that's to a fault. Like
now the weird thing, and I can't put
and all the comedy around his character is so to reintroduce this in case you haven't heard us talk about this before. So this is something I'm once again regurgitating Robert McKee, but I learned this in he had a comedy day, and he suggests that in all comedies the characters have most of the time a blind comic obsession. They're completely blind to it, but other times they're aware of it, but they're still obsessed with it. And all the humor in the story is based around that obsession. Yeah. And some characters, especially like sitcoms where you have like multiple seasons and stuff, they have like 3 or 4 obsessions, and the story finds these 3 or 4 obsessions and plays all the comedy.
Right.
So with Tommy Lee Jones, like definitely all the comedy around his character is about his deadpan seriousness. You know what I mean?
The weird thing is thinking about Will Smith in particular with this. There was a thing, I had a manager who used to do this, almost this game they would play to come up with concepts. And they would take an actor they really liked, and they would figure out their essence.
Okay.
Like, what's their essence?
Right. Yeah.
And it might be like Adam Sandler is a man-child, or I don't know. I'm saying that off the top of my head. I'm not sure that that's right. But they
in a lot of his early movies, yes, that would be the...
Yeah.
I think Will Smith's essence will overlap with his comedic obsession in this movie, but I don't know what his essence or his comedic obsession. I think this is almost quintessential Will Smith.
It's like he's playing himself.
Yeah, where he's kind of that funny character.
More so than like any other character we've seen.
It's if Will Smith joined Men in Black. Yeah,
which is fine. That's like what Paul Rudd does. I mean, Paul Rudd is just Paul Rudd in every movie.
It's not written to give him any type of backstory, so the audience at that point is like, Will Smith is joining the Men, but we don't know anything about him.
1997 audiences.
The Fresh Prince is joining Men in Black.
Dialed in on Will Smith,
right? The Fresh Prince, he's a cop and he's joining Men in Black. That's all we know.
What's funny about Will Smith as a character?
I said the riffs.
The what?
He wants to he's like creative to a fault, right? So it's like he does these. He's like obsessed with he just constantly.
always has to
Wait,
make a
I got
joke?
I would say even a better way. I would say Will Smith. He's charismatic, but most of all, he speaks for the common man. In a, you know what I mean?
He has to make sure that the common man's perspective
is said
stated
out loud, like
in these
you know what I mean?
ridiculous situations.
He's the one who literally will say out loud what the audience is thinking, and in a charismatic and funny way.
This may be normal to you, but this is crazy.
Yeah.
One of my favorite scenes that it's a weird scene, but I always like pay attention when I see it, is the one where they're making the woman forget, and he's like commenting on the damage,
The
like,
riffs, yeah.
and then
Right.
when he actually,
Right.
then I also love the one where he gives her the better memories. And
Yeah,
stuff like
that's
that.
what
You know, that's
he
the great
wants to
stuff.
give them,
Which is
better.
they carry through all three movies.
Yeah.
If they do,
Yeah.
that becomes part of Jay's character.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's like comic obsession right there.
Yeah.
Like, let's give him a
Also-
better memory than Weather Balloon and the.
Also, comic obsession on Jay's part. He cares more about the well-being of the people of the city.
Yep.
Hence, you know what I mean? Like he's like, you can't just keep wiping this girl's mind.
Yeah.
You're gonna give her brain cancer.
Yeah.
This person, give her a better memory than this awful life she has.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like he cares, whereas Kay doesn't have that necessarily warm caring
Not
about.
at all.
Yeah, it's one
Collateral damage to him isn't as much of a concern.
Right.
Yeah.
One-
Let's just wipe him.
One, it's all about the job, and the other one's looking at the bigger picture.
Yeah.
Like we're here to save these people. We should care about them too.
The-
Right.
Yeah. Well said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess I think that's
Yeah, we got those.
it's hard to say straight up. There's not like, it's not like Zombieland. He loves Twinkies. It's
Yeah.
not that simple.
Yeah.
It's not, these are a little bit more complex.
The Edgar the Bug is sensitive about others killing bugs, and it's all the comedy
right.
in every time.
And his race being superior.
Right. Oh, that's good too.
He's a superior race,
obsession
and
with-
no one will tell him otherwise.
That's probably they kind of go together. But
Yeah,
like
'cause
all the
not killing the bugs comes into the
comes
scene.
from
Right.
that. Yeah.
So superior bugs are superior. So every scene, the comedy with him is played around like his obsession with bugs being superior. They play that in
Right.
one angle after another.
After
The
another.
exterminators situation, the situation in the restaurant, the situation in the morgue where the guy's swatting the flies, and he's like, "Don't do that." So I think that one's a pretty easy one to
And
track.
Elle has this weird curiosity about bodies and dead things.
That's good.
She's obsessed with the obscurities that she has found.
Ooh, she loves the weird.
She's into it.
yeah.
Like she's kind of into it, and Jay
Yeah.
picks up on that. But
Yeah.
she's
Obsession with,
comically
like,
into
the weird.
autopsies.
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, I think it's funny that I don't know if this is an obsession, but like she's the one character in the story who every single time, like she's been flashed over and over, and she still every single time she gets flashed says, "I knew everybody was aliens." Like it's not weird to her at all
Right, no.
because she's seen everything, and they play that for comedy over and over again, like
Right.
'cause she's seen everything and she's into the weird.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
And those would be the four main characters
those,
that would
yeah,
have
I didn't
a
bother
comic.
with Zed. I'm sure there's something with Zed, but so it's very. We've found that when we've started doing this, every comedy seems to have them. It seems to track, and sometimes
every great comedy.
every great comedy
Yeah.
we've covered seems they seem to have a comic obsession, and the story seems to find ways to mine that for most of the comedy that involves that character.
It's probably one of the most invaluable pieces of comedy writing I've ever
Yeah,
had.
I never thought about it.
I can
before, but
imagine,
I think
like,
about it every
if
time
you're
I
gonna-
watch a comedy now.
If you're gonna write a comedy movie, it's invaluable, and I would think if you're actually a sketch writer, it's even more valuable
Yeah.
because sketches
that
have
shortcut.
they have to be so intensely comedically obsessed with something.
Yeah.
You could
right
you could
there,
almost see.
yeah.
I mean, not that improvers would want to do this, but once you latch on, that's what you commit to.
Yeah.
Right. Like this
It's
character
just
will
easier.
not let
It's
go.
clean and it's consistent, right?
Right.
And it like it like informs the decisions that you make about it. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Well, what did you guys learn talking about Men in Black?
I learned the importance of finding at the end of Act 2, break into 3, both a personal a moment that is a personal problem, causing a personal problem, and solving a overall story problem at the same time. If you can find the personal and the overall story at once, that's a great break into 3. Yeah.
And I really like what they do with the bug, the thing we mentioned about the pinch point kind of stuff, where they not only just do a pinch point, but they're constantly stacking that tension in a very fun way that we know it's inevitable that that's going to be the end.
And this is one of my favorite movies of all time. I've seen it I don't know, maybe even 100 times, I would say. And I've never thought about that escalation thing, to be honest with you. It never occurred to me.
Yeah.
Until right now. So I'm going to say on this podcast, I learned that. I never thought about the actual symbiotic relationship of the opening at the border and at the ending. And also, now that I think about it, when you said it, the opening is where, Kay loses a partner. And then the ending is where another Men in Black is lost. You know what I mean?
Mirrors.
Like, it's like a perfect symbiotic.
And I bet you if we really listed them all, that there would be other scenes in the movie that bookend just like that.
That bookend like that. Yeah. So it makes me love a movie I already loved more. So I kind of impressed.
It was fun to look at this from a screenwriting standpoint because I haven't really done that before.
Looking at the ones you already love is hard, but I enjoy it because I always feel like I end up loving them more.
Endless rewatchability.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
so
It's the Jamie sweet spot right here.
Yeah.
The Galaxy Quests and the Ghostbusters.
There's not many more left. Really. That's.
You can't think of another one?
I mean, I'm not a big fan of Evolution. Some people like it.
I like Evolution.
We're going to do Ghostbusters in September.
We'll do a Ghostbusters.
That's the 35th anniversary.
They're really the classics. There's really 3 of them, and that's about it.
Wow.
Yeah.
I would think like a Joe Dante movie would fit in there somewhere.
It's certainly like even Gremlins and stuff.
Or maybe Inner Space?
Something
like that?
Inner Space is one I like a lot.
The Burbs or something? I don't know.
Yeah, maybe The Burbs a little bit.
That feels like up your alley. But
yeah.
All right, guys.
All right, thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening. Men in Black, man.
Yeah.
Perfect classic movie. All
Go
right.
see the new one.
Yeah.
Not that we care.
Yeah, it doesn't really benefit us at all.
Chills.
I get 10%.
And thank you, Jamie, for writing Titanic.
Absolutely.
Yes.
You should watch it.
You have just listened to Writer's Blockbusters, a screenwriting podcast featuring 2 professionals and another guy. Available only on Thundergrunt.